Going to do another check on the Zoom platform for those who may be here joining us virtually. Again, if you're joining us in person, thank you. And if you're here to provide public comment, please provide a card there in the back of the room. You can bring it up front with the general public comment or item number. I see another hand raised, Gigi's phone. Gigi, can we check with you if you have general public comment or comment on any items?
Just general public comment.
Great, thank you. We'll get to you shortly.
Good.
And thanks everyone again for joining us. We'll begin shortly. You ready? I'll put us in record mode. All right, President Corson, we're now recording.
Good morning and welcome to the Board of Public Works meeting for Wednesday, January 15th. Ms. Zatorsky, if you'd like to take roll and establish quorum for us, please.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Devin Zatorsky with the Board of Public Works here to take roll and establish quorum. We're joined by President Corson, Vice President Chavez, President Pro Tem Grant, and Commissioner Kang, and it is 10:01 a.m. My apologies. We're also joined by our City Attorney Representative, Ms. Virginia Choi. President Corsand, we have general public comment today and comment on multiple of our agenda items. We also have comment that was submitted via our Google Doc system that's in the record for item number 1, just for the record.
Okay. Before we go to general public comment, just a note, we're going to take items 1 through 11 together. And colleagues, I'd like to make a motion to put items 15, 16, 17, and 18 on consent. If there is a second or if there's an objection.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Zatorsky, if you'd like to tally the votes. It's a first from myself and a second from President Pro Tem Grant to put items 15, 16, 17, and 18 on consent.
Great. We'll take the roll call starting with you, President Corsand.
Aye.
Vice President Chavez.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Grant.
Aye.
And Commissioner King.
Aye.
All ayes. The item is adopted and carries forthwith.
Thank you. And just to note for the public, we'll take consent items after public comment. I guess we will proceed to general public comment. I have 2 cards, or 1 card for in-person. And then how many virtual hands do we have?
We have 3 virtual hands at the moment.
Great. So general public comment is an opportunity for the public to address the board on public interest items that will be provided up to 1 minute per person for a cumulative of 10 minutes for general public comment. Testimony shall be limited in content to matters which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, and the board may not take any action on matters discussed during the public comment period. And we have our city attorney, Virginia Choi, on hand to ensure our public commenters stay on topic and within time. We'll start with audit outlay.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone fared well with this horrible fires. Okay, I want to bring up, I'm going to give y'all the benefit of the doubt because I respect this board. I respect the new president, Corsan, but I've been calling it out for a while, for a few months now, besides all the illegal planners that you guys refuse to deal with. I've been saying there's something going on with the water because I said you guys are like fast track all this reclamation, all this stuff fast tracking. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt is because you guys realized there was a problem and you were trying to rectify it ASAP. But you know all these projects take years. But I'm going to give you that benefit of the doubt. But somebody before this board slipped and they made a mistake, okay? And they didn't prepare our city to have the water it needed. The reservoir should not have been offline, okay, and it should have been filled. If it wasn't repaired, it should have been repaired by fire season, or there should have been some kind of alternate thing going on. So, like I said, I'm hoping that that's why everything was being fast tracked because you realize there's an error, and and that you were trying to rectify it. But I'm still here asking you to
Thank you,
please.
Speaker.
Thank you.
All right, we have a second multiple item in general public comment. Trump by dumb. You'll have 1 minute.
Give me 1 minute. It's on that on multiple items. Boo.
We're doing general public comment now, which is only 1 minute, and then we'll do the multiple agenda.
Oh, all right. 42 U.S.C. 1983, politely, fuck your engineers, fuck your local government, and fuck you. All you're doing is taxing the taxpayers for rundown piping to hydrants that you cut the water supply that did not allow the firemen or the goddamn niggers to put out the fires. And then you drain a goddamn well or reservoir and you don't tell the goddamn fire department that you did so because it's under infrastructure work. Well, you don't do one or the other, dickhead. You do multiple things when you got to do it. You don't wait for a goddamn second. So as long as I'm alive, as long as Trump exists, your goddamn stupid president, Dumb 46, will speak tonight. And all I have to say for that dumb white asshole foo, fuck you, go to hell, God hates you, you white asshole.
Thank you, Speaker. That's 1 minute.
And with that, we'll move to virtual public comment.
Great. We'll start with the hands we had raised. We'll go with Yvonne up first. If you could go ahead and unmute yourself, you'll have 1 minute.
Thank you. I'd like to ask that my request or comment about forestry, keeping the trees maintained to a 15-foot height throughout the city, be considered as a fire prevention method in the future. In addition, the palm trees that are throughout the city that exceed that height need to have annual trimming of the fronds so that they are removed and not become projectiles and fire attractants and spreaders. These are common sense, routine maintenance things that you are responsible for. It will also drop the urgency of the post-wind event cleanup problems that are
Thank you, Speaker. That's 1
endemic
minute.
within the city.
All right, our next hand raised, Mona, caller Mona, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself, you'll have 1 minute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hello, board. It's me again, Mona. And today, no surprise, we're talking about planters and the thorny bushes along L. Ron Hubbard Way, Fountain Avenue, in Catalina. Watched a video, was with a gentleman yesterday. The planters haven't moved. They're still not in code, whether it be city, state, or federal. The thorny bushes are still there. The roses are beautiful. However, they're thorny bushes along an easement. They are illegal per your code. The third topic is they were power washing L. Ron Hubbard Way, so they were making the bricks look better. What a waste of water last night. There was a lot of waste of water. You could have used that for fire prevention. Shaking my head, you guys. Yield back my time.
Next hand raised is Gigi's phone. Gigi, you'll have 1 minute once you unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so there's these fires going on. There's issues with water. And what does Scientology do? They're washing the sidewalk. They think it's the perfect time to do it. Yesterday around 3 p.m., they were out there wasting water, pressure washing a sidewalk for some random reason, most likely to get people to not be able to film the failure of their donation center they're trying to have. And when you have a fire going on and there's issues with water, usually people conserve water or don't do like high pressure water, pressure washing. And not only that, they're using something called aluminum brightening corrosive, which I do not know the legality of that, but it sounds kind of scary. And they're wasting the water. They're using this stuff. There's a fire going on. There's water issues. Put them in check. They keep wasting water and y'all never do anything.
Thank you, Speaker. That's 1 minute. All right, President Corsan, that's the end of our hands on the virtual platform.
All right, with that, we'll close general public comment for today's meeting and proceed to multiple agenda item public comment. The board will provide an opportunity for members of the public wishing to speak on more than one agenda item during multiple agenda item comment for up to 1 minute per item for a total of 3 minutes. This is the only time to speak on more than one agenda item. And we will start with Audit LA.
1 through 11. We need lighting. The city is very dark, let's just say, and it gets very scary. And especially when you're in a chair and you can't see the sidewalk and you can't see all the cracked sidewalk, all the broken sidewalk, all the curb cutouts that are not there because it's so dark. It's scary. So yeah, we need lighting. Okay, when it comes to number 12, okay, it's just one bidder. What diligence did you do to get more than one bidder? Because I don't like the idea of one bidder, because then you can't really evaluate their qualifications and how good they are, because you're desperate to get it done, so you only have the one bidder. I hope that there's people who are putting the effort out to get more bidders. And then I'm also very concerned that they will then say, well, I got the bid, there was no competition, this is how much I needed, and they're going to say, well, I low bid, because I needed to get the bid. Oh, no one else bid, so now I can come back and ask for more money. And I want to keep a track of this company name and find out how long it's going to take for them to come back to say, oh, we need a lot more money. And don't take this the wrong way, but you guys approve everything. I've heard one or two, I think 2 votes of no since I've been coming since June, okay, on anything. But I've never seen anything that's been requested turned down. And I don't think that's really serving the people, there has to be sometimes you say, you know what, no, this isn't working, take it back, rework it, and then bring it back to us. And that's what, we want you to do. We want you to, be more diligent with that. And same thing with 13, or are they all going to come back for more money? And I would like to know the percentage of how many bidders that say, okay, we're going to do it for this, actually do it, say for that, or even under. Does anyone ever give the money back? Does anyone ever say, you know what, we're under budget, we don't need it? Or do they, how many come back for more? The people are tired. We don't have the money to even fund our fire department. I mean, the fire department had to take a cut. We have a city that is burning to the ground, and because and how nice would it have been to have all that extra money, that these people come back begging for more to give to the fire department. I mean, it's just common sense. And I get it, LAPD gets the lion's share of the budget, and they need to be talking about that too. Do they really need as much as they're getting? As far as the consent items, sorry, my last 20 seconds. Oh, okay, it's all the, to get the bids. Okay, here, I'm gonna say, work more diligent to get more bids. Make it like set a standard that and whatever bid that they get, that's what they get. They're not going to be able to come back and beg for more, and whatever. You have to be more of a police on this.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. And please remove the planters.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, Trump bye-bye, or Trump bye, no.
Read the right card. It says Trump, and Trump the fuck out of you. The reason why we're gonna Trump the Scientology people is because they're fucking wasting water at a time when there's not enough water in the hydrants. Why not? Why not, Vahed? Why isn't there water in the hydrants? Why can't the fucking Scientology rapers like that fucking Ivan Payne, the priest who wrecked and fucked young boys for his pleasures, got away with it for lying for years, and not one goddamn Catholic church did anything like you're not doing to Scientology to stop it. You're going in a blind eyes. They're a cult. A goddamn cult. And I don't give a fuck about their God. I am a God. A God of war. A God who initiates and irritates motherfuckers who don't fucking participate to listen why we're using water to clean the goddamn sidewalks only around Scientology buildings. What about the rest of the niggers that don't clean the sidewalks or streets from the city of Los Angeles maintenance? So put the fucking lights on and assess it, because all it does is bring higher taxes for new fucking lights. We don't need them. Fix the ones that are there and replace the ones that are broken. Real simple math. Fuck the mayor. She's dumb like you. Now, going into the shit about the bids, look at this Hoover system off of Wilshire Boulevard. Responsible bidder? No, it should be qualified bidder. Your fucking mayor has a fake degree from USC, you spoiled ass fucking children, and look what she did to the city of Los Angeles. She put you on the record. All of you are a bunch of fuck ups. All of you are responsible for the fires, you're responsible for the hydrants, you're responsible for the maintenance, and goddamn Trump was right. Newscom should have got the forestry department to fix the fucking problem with giving us some allowance between the brush. Instead, you white niggers don't know shit.
Please stay on topic, Speaker.
You don't know shit. And again, I am on topic. Landscape. The forestry is landscape maintenance. Fucked up. LA fucked up. And you're all a bunch of fuck ups. In 1961, the Great Bel Air fire is the same situation of today. You want to get rid of the white, yoke, nigger people that live there so you can raise the taxes and rebuild. Fuck you.
All right.
Get it right.
Seeing no other public comment cards for in-person, we'll go to the Zoom platform.
Yes, we have one. Yvonne, speaking on items 13, 14, and 17. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Item 13, the price, the price differential up 25% is inexcusable. That would be $168,000, and that would be a whole new contract that would be required of the board if that amount of money is required. The allowable overruns are not specified in the contract. It should be a fixed price contract. This is ordinary maintenance of a installed feature in the city. There's no excuse for this amount of latitude in the price. And you know darn well they're going to spend up to the budget of the contract and then come back and ask for more. This is sloppy management and sloppy contracting. Number 14, the people asking for the money should not be allowed those monies because they are professionally licensed contractors who professionally are responsible for performing their contract in accordance with the contract they had with the city. If they hired Tom, Dick, and Harry that aren't within the city's approved in that contract, that's on them. That should not be on the city. The prime contractor should pay who they hired, not the city. City should not reward bad professional behavior. Number 17, $13 million spent to destroy and rebuild a maintenance yard at this time is an unwise expenditure. You need maintenance yards to be functional so that the repair and restoration of the burned out portion of the cities can go as quickly as possible. Put this bid aside, do not consider it. It's something that it would be nice to do in the future, but this type of task is not today's issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. All right, President Corsan, that's the end of our multiple agenda item commentary.
All right, with that, we'll close multiple agenda item public comment and we'll proceed to approval of the minutes from Monday, December 16th and Monday, January 6th. If there is a second to my motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Zatorsky. There is a first from myself and a second from Commissioner King.
Great, we'll take roll call starting with you, President Corsan.
Aye.
Vice President Chavez? Aye. President Pro Tem Grant? And Commissioner King?
Aye.
Wonderful, all ayes, the item is approved.
Great, thank you. Next up, we'll take up our consent items, items 15, 16, 17, and 18. We have to vote on them again, so I will make a motion to approve these items on consent. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you. Ms. Zatorsky, there's a first from myself and a second from Vice President Chavez.
Great, let me just take note of that. Sorry, 1 second. All right, we'll take roll call starting with you, President Corsan.
Aye.
Vice President Chavez?
Aye.
President Pro Tem Grant?
Aye.
And Commissioner King?
Aye.
All ayes, the item is adopted and carries forthwith.
All right, moving on to items 1 through 11 from the Bureau of Streetlight. We have Mr. Ruben Flamenco here, and I'll let you describe each one of them.
Item 1, Ruben Flamenco, Bureau of Street Lighting. Item 1 pertains to the Pacific Avenue and Hurricane Street Lighting District. Item 2 pertains to the Lincoln Boulevard and Madison Way Number 1 Lighting District. Item 3 pertains to the Burbank Boulevard and Canoga Avenue Lighting District. Item 4 pertains to the Rowena Avenue and Hyperion Avenue Number 1 Lighting District. Item 5 pertains to the Glendale Boulevard and Waverly Drive Number 1 Lighting District. Item 6 pertains to the Silver Lake Boulevard and Ewing Street Lighting District. Item 7 pertains to the Moore Park Street and Violent Avenue Lighting District. Item 8 pertains to the 102nd Street and Juniper Street Lighting District. Item 9 pertains to the Colada Street and Union Pacific Avenue Lighting District. Item 10 pertains to the Lexington Avenue and Kenmore Avenue Lighting District. And item 11 pertains to the Stagg Street and Oso Avenue Number 1 Lighting District. Items 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, 10, and 11 pertain to lighting districts which we are creating in conjunction with private development projects. Items 4 and 5 pertain to lighting districts which we are creating in conjunction with Bureau of Engineering initiated street improvement program projects. Item 8 pertains to a lighting district which we are creating in conjunction with the city's Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program. Ballots for items 1 through 11 were mailed on December 4th, 2024. Ballots for items 1 through 11 must be received by the city clerk's office by next Tuesday, January 21st. We are requesting for the board to deny the protest that we heard just a few minutes ago. We are requesting for the board to adopt and forward items 1 through 11 forthwith to City Council.
Thank you. Speaking slowly as Commissioner Kang stepped out of the room, give him a chance to come back. Uh, Commissioners, any questions or comments? President Pro Tem Grant.
On these assessments, is it my understanding that there's also a vote of the residents affected? Is there a vote also of the residents affected for these assessments?
Yes, the benefiting property owners have received their ballots and they will be voted and it'll be tallied after next week's council hearing.
So this in fact enables the vote, the election, if you will, to take place?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion on the table on this item?
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Ms. Zatorsky, there's a first from President Pro Tem Grant and a second from Vice President Chavez.
Okay, we will take the roll call for items 1 through 11. We'll start with you, President Corsan.
Aye.
Vice President Chavez.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Grant.
Aye.
Okay, all ayes, and the item is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 12 from the Bureau of Streetlight and Bureau of Engineering. We have a contract award to Servitec Electric for Wilshire Boulevard, Grand Avenue to Hoover Street, STM. We have Mr. Lawrence Al-Masood here with us. Please proceed when you're ready.
Good morning, everyone. This is Lawrence with the Bureau of Street Lighting. I'm here to recommend award for the Wilshire Boulevard, Grand Avenue to Hoover Street STM project to Servitec Electric, Inc., the sole bidder. This project will convert the existing high-voltage street lighting systems to low voltage by replacing 182 fixtures and lamps with LED fixtures and lamps. Work also includes the installation of new conduit, buried pull boxes, and wires. In addition, the project will include the installation of technology to provide real-time reporting of light outages and failures. The project is located in the vicinity of Westlake and downtown Los Angeles. The project duration is 200 working days. The financing for this project is by Senate Bill 1 for Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Act, Local Streets and Roads Program. The first low bidder, Servitec, submitted a bid for $1,840,554, which is about 20% higher than the engineer's estimate of $1,533,000. Servitec has complied with the mandatory subcontracting minimum requirement of 4% by pledging 5.54% under the Women Business Enterprise and 5.05% under the Other Business Enterprise. This bidder has met all the requirements of the bid and was found to be a responsive and responsible bidder. The bid bond for this project is still valid. Therefore, in view of these findings, we are recommending that the board award Servitec the contract for this project. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Ms. Zatorsky, do we have any hands raised on this item?
On item number 12, we do not.
Great. Commissioners, any questions or comments? President Pro Tem Grant.
Thank you, Lawrence. The project seems very worthwhile, the merit. Can you address the question that was raised earlier about why there's only been one bidder and what the process was that ended up with just one bidder, one responsible bidder?
Sure. We've had a few projects now where specifically these types of projects that are high voltage to low voltage conversions that we have put out to award, and we've received Servitec, who is the sole bidder on a few of our projects. This is a high voltage conversion project which requires specialty knowledge, electrical knowledge, and special licenses. Not a lot of contractors are familiar with that. Currently, there are over 95% of the city street lights are LED, meaning they are on a multiple system. And the few series circuits that we have left that require high voltage conversion to low voltage, they're difficult, and the skill level required for these conversions is getting scarce. Another issue with why we only had one bidder came after COVID. I spoke to our lead construction engineer why we aren't having a lot of bids, and he had mentioned that post-COVID, a lot of the contractors had lost talent. A lot of reorganization, organizationally, they had to restructure and they've lost staff. So all of those contributed to this issue.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion?
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Zatorsky, there's a first from President Pro Tem Grant and a second from Vice President Chavez.
Great. We'll take the roll call starting with you, President Corsan,
Aye.
Vice President Chavez,
Aye.
President Pro Tem Grant,
Aye.
and Commissioner Kang.
Aye.
Wonderful. All ayes. The item is adopted and carries forthwith.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 13 from the Bureau of Street Services and the Bureau of Engineering, Council Districts 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 15, contract renewal for Green Garden Inc., landscape maintenance. And we have here Mr. Hector Banuelos.
Yes, good morning, President Corzand, Commissioners. Hector Banuelos with Streets LA, Urban Forestry Division. What we have before us is a request that the board award and allow the exercise the first year option. This is the first of 2 one-year options of a current existing landscape maintenance contract here in the Bay Harbor area of the city of Los Angeles. The city is divided into 4 areas. This is one of the 4 areas and one of the 4 contracts that are being maintained by a contractor. The contractor is Green Garden. The contract was awarded in November of 2023 and executed on January 19th of 2024. It's soon to expire, and the contractor has complied with all of the business inclusion program and the mandatory subcontractor minimum that was verified by Office of Contract Compliance. The contract will maintain approximately 2,980,000 square feet of landscape medians. When the city exercises this first year option, it will allow the contractor to continue with the landscape medians maintenance servicing once every 2 weeks. So we ask that the board allow the city to exercise the first year option so that maintenance can be continued. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments on this item? Is there a motion to entertain?
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Ms. Zatorsky, there is a first from Commissioner Kang and a second from Vice President Chavez.
Great. I'll take the roll call starting with you, President Corsan,
Aye.
Vice President Chavez,
Aye.
President Pro Tem Grant,
Aye.
and Commissioner Kang.
Aye.
Great. All ayes. The item is adopted and carries forthwith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 14, our last voting item for today from Bureau Contract Administration, Bureau of Engineering. We have advisement number 2, contract acceptance, Machado Lake Pipeline Project, Eastern Reach. And we have Mr. Mark Gutierrez here.
Good morning, everyone. Mark Gutierrez, Contract Administration, OCC. This item was continued from December 16th, so about a month ago. Our recommendation is to find the prime contractor, OHL, having utilized 1 unapproved bid-listed SBE sub and 1 unapproved bid-listed OBE sub, but not assess them with a penalty in the amount of $80,062.06. I'm going to go over those 2 subcontractors now. The first was bid-listed Small Business Enterprise Calmex Engineering, Inc. They were bid-listed to perform asphalt paving and trench work, totaling $123,000. They performed well in excess of that amount at $278,144.28. However, they were not approved to perform work on the project. Therefore, the contractor may be assessed a penalty totaling $27,814.43, which represents 10% of the amount of work that they performed. Our staff notified the contractor of the potential penalty. The contractor responded stating, while Calmex performed work on the project, they don't have any records to indicate why they weren't approved. They continued, we're sure that we submitted them for approval to BCA, but the reason they weren't approved should have come from us, BCA. Our staff researched with BCA Special Research and Investigation Section, who does subcontractor approvals, and they confirmed that Calmex was neither submitted nor approved to perform work, but they did add that had the contractor requested approval of the firm, that firm would have been approved. Since the contractor's use of Calmex then did not put the city at risk due to confirmation that the sub would have been approved, staff recommends that the monetary penalty in the amount of $27,814.43 not be assessed. The second subcontractor is an other business enterprise named Griffin Dewatering Corp., bid listed to perform dewatering totaling $521,000. They too performed work in excess of their bid listed amount, totaling $522,476.31, but similarly were not approved to perform work. Therefore, the contractor may be assessed a penalty of $52,247.63, which represents 10% of the amount of work performed. In a similar fashion, we informed the contractor of the potential penalty. Their response was similar, acknowledging Griffin did perform work on the project, but not having any records to indicate why they weren't approved. They added, "We are sure we submitted them to BCA for approval, but the reason they weren't approved should have come from us, BCA." Staff again consulted with SRI, who in this case did confirm Griffin was submitted for approval, but under the name Griffin Contract Dewatering. SRI rejected the approval request since the bid listed firm and firm performing work was named Griffin Dewatering, minus the word contract. But they did confirm as well that had the contractor followed up and requested approval of the correct firm, Griffin would have been approved. Since the contractor's use of Griffin did not put the city at risk due to confirmation that the sub would have been approved, staff recommends that a penalty in the amount of $52,247.63 not be assessed for that subcontractor. That concludes my report. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. We do have one public speaker card for in-person for this one, Mr. Brenton Williamson. And you will have 1 minute.
Good morning. I'm Brenton Williamson with OHLA USA, just here at your request.
Closer to the mic, yeah. There you go.
Sorry, I'm Brenton Williamson with OHLA USA. I'm here at your request from the previous meeting to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Yes, you are. So you won't have 1 minute. Do we have any other hands raised, Mr. Twerski? No. Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions or comments? We did ask that the person of interest, I guess, should attend to answer any questions. Commissioner Kang, and then we'll go to Vice President Chavez.
So good morning. Thank you so much for coming in. I believe we were trying to look into this request and would love to hear from you whether all the protocols that you've followed that were correct and that indeed that this assessment should be waived in terms of the penalty.
Yeah, absolutely. So at bid time, we list a bunch of subcontractors, whether they're SBE, WBE, DBE, that's for the full recourse there. We had both CalMex and Griffin Dewatering listed. I'll go through CalMex first. CalMex we listed and utilized. Unfortunately, I think the project was awarded in 2018. We submitted the majority of these towards the end of 2018, November 2018. And at that point, we weren't in an executed subcontract with CalMex. So they ran a slightly different timeline. We received all the letters that said, we must submit them to the Bureau, as well as the subcontractor receives those same letters minus the extra level that we have here. So in 2019, when we did have an executed subcontract, CalMex themselves reached out to the Bureau, BCA, and sent a letter dated August 7th, requesting, basically stating their compliance with the project labor agreement on that project and that they'd be performing the work. And it's our understanding from CalMex that was received by BCA. And unfortunately, I'm not sure if the issue at this point with some turnover of staff, and that it's my understanding that the project team, both OHL, now we operate as OHLA, and the city staff on the project were under the impression that CalMex was approved. Ultimately, we now know that that's not the case. We got the notice of non-compliance in 2022, but there should have been a separate letter going from OHL as well as the one that went from CalMex. So that's the story there, and I don't know if that answers the question. And then I'll answer the Griffin dewatering versus Griffin contract dewatering. At bid time, so these two agencies, these two businesses rather, are kind of like partner businesses. It's the same executive directors, same managers, same location, same email addresses, same physical address, same telephone numbers. They run one as a union outfit and one as a non-union outfit. At bid time, they incorrectly gave us the bid from the non-union outfit that wouldn't comply with the the project labor agreements on the project. To the So when we submitted for approval, we submitted their business that would comply with the PLA. It was ultimately rejected, and that backwards and forwards should have happened at that time to explain that whole sequence there. And we received a letter from Griffin, which we passed through to the city and I believe BCA as well, outlining that discrepancy and kind of from our subcontractor taking ownership of that error, because it was with the documents they sent to us at bid time, we passed those along. It was corrected, and the works performed on the project were performed by basically the same entity that we had tried to list at bid time but incorrectly done so, and performed per the project labor agreement of the project. So I hope that gives a bit of context to the background. Yeah.
Thank you. Vice President Chavez.
Yes, thank you for coming before us today to just try to shed light on this matter. Given the size of this contract when this first came before us in December, we were very concerned to just hear about the lack of protocols that occurred, that they was able to go so far, right, as to and thankfully everything worked out, but I think the one issue that kept coming up for me, and I think my colleagues as well, is what certainty can we have that this won't happen in the future if OHL is selected for future projects. And so that's why we wanted to hear directly from the company representatives to talk to us about, what procedures or what protocols have you put in place just to ensure that these miscommunications don't happen. I would encourage you to talk to Bureau of Contract Administration to sort of better improve the communications to ensure that there is, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. I understand that there's a massive amount of paperwork that is required, especially when you have so many different subs working on a project. But we're now out in the field, right, double checking. We have staff and personnel that do that. I think there's still unanswered questions about, why this wasn't caught sooner. But I do think that one thing that would help alleviate some concerns is just, we can't really do much about the past, but what are we going to do in the future to just assure that that communication is there and that these things don't happen again? And if there was an error, that it gets caught sooner. And so just wanted to see what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so generally these projects run with often communication between city staff and contractor staff out in the field, weekly meetings, sometimes bi-weekly meetings. This is an agenda item on most projects. I wasn't personally on this project, but on the projects that I'm currently involved with, that these kind of DBE, SBE, other business enterprise is a topic of discussion that occurs weekly, as well as subcontract compliance. Utilizing listed subcontractors per California General Public Contracting Code and the city standards to at least the amount that's required per that, and tracking that throughout the project is kind of a group effort. It ultimately is our contractual responsibility to comply, but it's a group effort that we generally on projects double check that we are doing those things and we catch it early. Unfortunately, in this case here, I think the project staff, certainly with the records that I've seen, thought the people in the field thought we were complying, and it wasn't until the 2022 kind of audit by the BCA that it was identified, and that was about 18 months after the project was completed in the field. So, did I get?
No, I understand. So you're saying that there were regular and often weekly meetings with city staff discussing the work that the subs were doing, but there was never any alerts given to you by city staff about the non-approval of the subcontractors. Is that correct?
That's correct. But look, I did want to add in the caveat there that it's ultimately not the city's responsibility to tell us that. I'm not trying to
Right.
position that. I'm just saying that generally these projects work best collaboratively, and we miss things. The city misses things on the design and other aspects, and identifying those early helps the project and overall compliance with the contract. So in this case here, it's my understanding that nobody at the field level thought there was one notice of non-compliance that was issued for a separate subcontractor. I just want to add this in for Savala. They were listed as a for other business, I think small business credit, if I remember correctly, but they weren't submitted for a subcontractor because they weren't a subcontractor on the project. They were listed as an equipment rental company. So that was the one that I was of the understanding that we caught at the field level, but that was addressed with letters backwards and forwards advising that the reason they weren't submitted as a subcontractor was because they were not performing subcontract work on the project. So I believe that the issues related to CalMex and Griffin dewatering versus Griffin contract dewatering, those weren't identified in non-compliance until after the project was physically completed.
So I'm not sure if I heard your response to my inquiry about what protocols or procedures has your company put in place in order to avoid this from happening in the future.
Yeah. So we have basically we call it a DBE, but it's not just for disadvantaged businesses. Different entities have different names and different avenues for running that. A DBE representative as part of our company who's basically ensuring compliance across the projects. We have regular forms that we complete weekly to basically ensure that the people who are coming out to do the work are representative of that business. One of the key and one of the things that form is really checking is that you don't have a DBE or an SBE or something like that subcontracting the works to a non viable entity and basically second tier subcontracting that works. So we have a form that basically we do like that for all of our subcontractors, and that passes through. The miss on this one wasn't on that side of it. We ultimately used the right side. It was on the contracting submission to BCA, which is running kind of just to the side of our prime contract between ourselves and the city. Because the entity with BCA do not attend those weekly meetings and yeah.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. President Pro Tem Grant.
Thank you for coming today. What's your role exactly with the company?
Yeah, sorry, I'm a senior project manager, so I run a handful of projects for OHL.
Okay. And were you present during the initiation of the bid?
I was not.
You were not?
No.
Yeah, I've been in that position before where somebody else sends me to take the heat. My sympathies. So you weren't present during the bidding or the pre-bid or the bid meetings?
No, I was with OHL towards the end of 2019, so for the second half of the project, but was not on this project.
And this is the second bid that OHL has successfully, the second project that OHL has undertaken. So this isn't the first time that you've been with the city?
It is not. I believe we ran multiple projects at the same time. I believe the Argo pump station was done between OHL at a similar time to this project.
Yeah.
As well as we did a Machado Lake project, and then this was the Machado pipeline project.
Okay.
So those ran almost back to back.
I appreciate your appearance, your honesty, and the steps that you've taken, but I have a couple questions for Mr. Gutierrez. Can we run through the determination of the penalty again? Who established the penalty for non-compliance? Do you know? Was that City Council?
So it's part of the bid proposal package requirements, which
Okay.
gives the board discretion to assess up to 10%
Okay.
penalty for the amount of work performed.
And the reason why there's a penalty? What are we trying to correct or prevent?
Say in an instance where a sub performed work that was not approved and they're not registered with the city BTRC wise, or they're not licensed to perform work, they have past bad work history and they shouldn't be out on the project. That's a to me, justification to penalize up to the maximum there. And it's because they shouldn't have been out there doing work to begin with.
And what was the reason that you're suggesting that the penalty be waived in this situation?
Be waived in that the city was not put at risk, meaning had the contractor correctly submitted them for approval and submitted them timely, our SRI section would have approved them. So we are definitely documenting that they used 2 unapproved subs. I forget which commissioner asked this, but if this were to happen again in OHL's case, and they've been put on notice, hey, we saw you use 2 unapproved subs, we didn't penalize you on this project. To me, if the same mistake happens again, that's justification more to penalize on a future project.
I mean, I'm just expressed this before. I'm a little concerned that when we have penalties put in place, the reason is that we want to make sure that city rules and regulations are followed because we assume that those rules and regulations have a purpose and that the violation of those rules, in fact, can either put the city in harm's way or in fact, we're not in fact getting what we are paying for. And have you been aware of situations in this past where penalties have been assessed but then reduced by the board?
Precisely, yes, that has definitely occurred in the past. It is an up to 10% penalty. In this case, we're recommending 0, but board has discretion, correct me if I'm wrong, city attorney, to go anywhere from $0 up to the 10% max.
So, I mean, from my perspective, I understand the Griffin mix-up as explained. I'm a little concerned it's a bit of a shell game, but from my perspective, at least the union side got the award rather than the non-union one. But that's somewhat the same CEO, same phone numbers. The description of the subcontractor is so similar. I could see how that's passed. The other one seems, while it was an approved one, was not what we understood to have been the case, correct?
That's correct. One was never submitted at all, and then the other
Right.
incorrect name. Yes.
So, I mean, my perspective, I could see a reduction of the penalty to just the first one described, as opposed to the second. And what would this, does the Bureau have a position in terms of reduced penalty or no penalty?
In this case, our recommendation is no penalty in the sense that holistically, when we looked at it, it's, I don't want to use the word clerical error, but their failure to submit did not put the city at risk, meaning, had they submitted them, they met the requirements of BTRC being licensed, no debarments from performing subcontracting work in this case. So to us, it's documenting. They did use 2 unapproved subs. They shouldn't have done that.
I mean, I am pleased, and I think that's a good thing, that in fact all the requirements of the work was performed successfully. My concern is then it would allow anyone to submit anyone else who is similarly qualified but not initially identified, which is in a sense what happened here, correct?
Yeah, correct. My position is they did submit other subcontractors who did get approved, so they were aware of that process.
Right.
They should have done it for these 2
Right.
as well.
There's the bidding, there's the pre-bid meeting, there's a bid meeting, there's a subcontract forms, all that stuff should have identified exactly who's performing the work.
That's correct, yes.
Sorry, Vice President Chavez.
I have one just quick follow-up question to my colleague's line of questioning. Can you help me understand better the framework that you use, the staff uses for making decisions on penalties? It sounds like you're really looking at intent and risk exposure. So do you have what's your internal policy on how you make the decision about a penalty or not?
That's a great question. And how we're recommending here is a little more, or a lot more work for us, in that in the past, our recommendation would be unapproved sub. The maximum penalty is this. We're recommending that. In this case, that's that $80,000 amount. and then the board would have discretion to assess that at 80,000 or lower it. Now what we're doing is what I would consider a more comprehensive evaluation. For example, we asked the question to BCA SRI, the group that we work with that does approvals, that extra question, hey, had they done everything correctly, would they have been approved? And then SRI told us yes. And that's how we came to the recommendation that because they would have been approved, the city was not put at risk, no monetary penalty. But that's something that we're doing now that we haven't done throughout the years that we've been doing this. We just recommend a penalty. We'd recommend the max penalty and then leave it to the board to either go with that or reduce down.
And can you share sort of why the change in approach, like just sort of big picture, if this is how you're handling all of the, situations that come up similarly, and it's different than how it used to be, what was the reasoning behind that?
If I can remember correctly, I think our current president was here, but past board members asked for that in conjunction with city attorney that, hey, we want your recommendation as a staff and then give it to the board to decide with all those facts out on the table. Quite honestly, it would be much easier for us in black and white to say, hey, the subs were not approved. This is the maximum penalty. That's our recommendation. But we were asked in the past to do a more comprehensive and holistic review.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to dovetail off of President Pro Tem Grant's remarks is in my time, BCA would come and say, this is the maximum penalty, and then leave it up to us to decide whether it's the maximum penalty or a lesser amount and come up with the justification. And we're not the policy experts on that. We're not knowledgeable of all of the details. I'm confident that, this is the right recommendation because I know how detail oriented they are now in presenting these reports. I understand your concerns of setting a precedent and bad actors of taking advantage of it. I think, Mr. Gutierrez, what you're basically saying is because of the focus on each review, that should not be the case. And I think maybe for this board, if you could speak to that more in that review process and not an official commitment, but a commitment to maintaining that so there are no future actors who take advantage of this situation.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope I understood your question correctly. This project was in 2018, so that's about 7-8 years ago. We have internal meetings within the Bureau where definitely after that date, inspectors out on the field, when they write notices of noncompliance, they do that immediately when they see a subcontractor is there that shouldn't, and then remove that contractor from the project, meaning they inform the contractor cease work. So that's on the ground level. Bringing these recommendations to you before the board based on prior discussion, we look at it on a case-by-case basis. So this is definitely something we don't normally recommend, but it's a recommendation based on everything we researched on this specific project.
Before we proceed to a vote, is anyone unsatisfied with the presentation and the board BCA's recommended actions?
I would still seek a reduced penalty, but I understand the board's directive. I think it's important for us to at least demarcate what our concerns are, and in the situation, clearly the larger portion of the penalty for Griffin is understandable. I'm just not convinced that this is the 27,000 one. The explanation is not sufficient for me.
Is there an alternative you would pursue or ask for or seek?
It would be a reduced penalty of 27,000, or well, starting there would be one. Out of 27,000, out of what, a $5 million project, I believe was the amount of the project. And then I think second to that. I'm a little, and Mr. Gutierrez, your explanations has been very good on this stuff, and I appreciate. And the only consideration that I'm sort of mitigating against myself on that is that there should have been, or there were weekly interviews with those performing the work, as my understanding is. And at that time, BCA should have identified or discovered who was actually doing the work, as opposed to the previously identified subcontract. That's correct, right? That in one sense, we failed to do our job at some point during the middle of this project.
Yes, we work adjacent to the labor section, my section, business inclusion section. I believe those interviews occur to confirm PLA requirements and such. On this project, the contractor did meet all the PLA requirements, the percentages for local hire, local apprentice, and transitional worker. But I do hear what you're saying.
So they're performing the work correctly. They were paying the workers correctly. They were observing the requirements of a project labor agreement correctly. They just forgot to ask who was doing this correctly. Seems like it, right? I mean, everything else was just the name at the top of the form was incorrect.
I see your point of view, yes.
Is there any other input, pauses? I'm going to pivot here. Mr. Gutierrez, I hate to do this to you. So here's my recommendation. Let's continue this for 2 weeks on this basis. You heard President Pro Tem Grant's suggestion. If you could present a matrix and option choices. I think what we're hearing from President Pro Tem Grant is a reduction. If you could just lay that out in a different way for us to review. I don't want to just say yes or no and then not have a full understanding of the reduced penalties that President Pro Tem Grant is recommending, because we don't have anything written or virtual for us to review. So we can just weigh those two options.
Can I share my understanding of Commissioner Grant's recommendation is to assess the penalty for CalMex. So CalMex's 10% amount of work performed is $27,814.43. And if I was listening correctly, that's because CalMex was never submitted at all. However, I believe to waive the potential penalty for Griffin, that totals $52,247.63. I believe his justification is that they were submitted, they added one name. They added the word contract to Griffin Dewatering, and that's why they were rejected. So the sum of those two penalties, that $52K and $27K, is the maximum penalty on page 1 of the report, $80,062.06. I believe President Pro Tem Grant's recommendation is just to assess a penalty of $27,814.43 as it relates to CalMex.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I mean, I'm not used to bargaining at a table like this, but I like the idea of what President Corson said, and a matrix is sort of, because even within CalMex, I could foresee some even reduction of that penalty, given the fact that there was I'm trying to use the right term, counsel, so we don't, we didn't properly identify who was performing the work at a stage in which it could have been discovered. Now, I'm not sure if the work had already been initiated by the time DCA first had its opportunity. to identify who the actor was or when exactly that first meeting came along. If the discussions began before the work even commenced, then I think that we bear a greater responsibility. If those meetings were towards the end of near completion of the project, then I think the culpability is a little bit greater. Do you understand?
I do understand, and my personal opinion is the monetary is very subjective, right? So I can share that past boards on a similar recommendation, they use like a 10% of the 10%.
Right.
So I've seen in the past an 8,000 penalty in this case, which again is subjective. Is that enough? Does
That would be 3,000, wouldn't it? 2,700.
Right. It
probably cost that much for you to come here today almost.
Exactly. So there's, I think
Right.
to everyone, the dollar amount would be subjective.
I agree it's subjective, and that's why I'm asking if we can just have like options to choose from. And I also think it's a bit more fair for the party of interest to kind of know what the two options are in advance. I'm comfortable moving forward with that mechanism of understanding the two options. And I will personally apologize that we didn't kind of come up with this the last go around when we continued it. And with respect to the previous board and boards before that, I think like this is a different composition. And I think what we're asking for is a little bit more of options and more, I wouldn't say visibility, but a little bit of more predictability in what, how those options come about, if that makes sense. I think what I'm hearing is a little bit more of, let's learn how the sausage is made and how we get to the formulaic numbers. I see heads nodding, but I'll take a verbal yes or no too. Yes, come on up.
Thank you. The only bit I just wanted to add is of the steps that happen with this subcontracting process, we bid list a subcontractor, and then if we were to go with a completely different subcontractor who we never submitted, that would be, up to a 10% penalty. Ultimately, we did use the same subcontractor, and I hope that gets accounted for in whatever assessment gets made. Secondary to that, I could find lots of meeting records that the city inspector and the city staff were fully aware that this was the contractor we were using. We bid listed them. I can also send the correspondence where separately CalMex themselves have sent something to the Bureau of Contract Administration prior to them doing works, showing that they intend to comply with the project labor agreement and they understand the project, the payroll reporting and all those obligations that they had under the contract. I just hope that those extra steps, the one step that, I'm not here to say otherwise, that we missed was sending a letter from OHL to the BCA was missed. We thought we had done that, and through all the records chasing that I've done since I was on the project, I have not found that.
Now, my understanding is from Mr. Gutierrez that you've had a bit of a turnover in your own staff.
Correct.
The two things I'm balancing is that a little bit, but also that my understanding is that we never received, there's no record of us receiving those letters, correct? So, it's someone who's now gone said they called, but they're gone. So we can't, and it's a confusing state, and that's why I'm
and
arguing with myself more and more in terms of even mitigating the reduced penalty.
And that's the other part is from the internal meeting minutes that I've read and the ones that happened on the site, it seems like everyone at the time felt like it had already happened and it was approved. Unfortunately, there are no physical records to that.
And the other thing, just for you, is part of, I think, our determinations in this action and other actions is 70%, I'm making up percentages for you, but also it's for those who come after you, that they should have understanding, and the DCA, and that will be instructed that, look, this board is very strict about this. There's a reason why these rules are set in place, and that you need to follow them, because if you don't, no matter how much Mr. Gutierrez or his colleagues argue before us, we're going to say the rules weren't followed, you're going to get assessed a penalty. It's looking forward in terms of what precedent this sets. Now, there are so many mitigating factors here. I think President Corsan's suggestion of a matrix to look at what do we take into consideration and not take into consideration, I think will help all of us go further in terms of having a process that's both fair, equitable, and responsible.
For our city attorney, Ms. Choi, is it within the rules for President Pro Tem Grant to meet with Mr. Gutierrez and develop this matrix that comes before us?
I am not entirely sure that the rules get into those specifics. All we know is that the rules provide, the LAAC provides that the board has discretion to approve penalty amounts, but I don't think it addresses specifically whether a commissioner or a board member can be involved in the process of developing the penalty, and I would think not.
Because we're not involved in settlement.
Okay. So, Mr. Williamson, before you step away, are you okay with us, would January 29th be sufficient time for you to prepare the documentation you just mentioned? And Mr. Gutierrez, would that be sufficient time to just develop this matrix and a visual of the recommendations from Mr. President Pro Tem Grant and what BCA is already recommending? That's a yes from Mr. Gutierrez.
I can provide all the documentation that I have in front of me tomorrow.
Okay.
Just to clarify who would want to be briefed on said matrix. Essentially, it will show to me in my head, off the top of my head, anywhere from 0 to that 80K penalty. We could differentiate between those two subs, but then the amounts would be anywhere from 0 to that 27
Okay.
for CalMex, and then 0 to that 58 for
I think you can do it.
Yeah. But I almost think almost everything. I mean, it was almost a going forward as well as this one. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then, Mr. Gutierrez, if you could work with President Pro Tem Grant on a briefing before it comes back so we can clarify some of these questions for him in more detail. If there is no objection, I think we'll just continue this to January 29th, which will be Commissioner Mitchell's birthday, and we'll call this her birthday present from us to her. Seeing no objection. The joke here is that she is a former judge. So, all right. Ms. Zatorsky, have we cleared the desk for today?
Yes, President Corsan, that's all of our agenda items.
Fantastic. It is 11:11 and we are adjourned for
Oh,
today.
11:11.